Thank you so much for joining us on TVC Breakfast once again. And it's time for us to look at what the papers are saying. First, we have a run through the Nation newspaper with the banner headline, Nigeria asks ECOWAS to drag South Africa before AU. We must send signal that xenophobia is unacceptable. Tinubu don't change constitution to extend tenure. Okay, right. Then the next one is the First Daily. Troops foil ISWAP school abduction plot, averts fresh student kidnap. And this Nigeria says troops rescue 46 students, foil ISWAP kidnap bid in Borno. Federal government arraigns 3 over Orire abduction. Next is the Nigerian Tribune. Tinubu will beat Atiku. Southern Coalition APC boast, says president's votes can't be splintered. In the South, Atiku Amechi ticket will unseat Tinubu Shetima. That's according to the ADC. The Punch newspaper says dollar sale row. Marketers halt Dangote fuel loading. Federal government steps in. Pricing uncertainty triggered Dangote fuel loading suspension. Marketers. Refinery rejects claims of loading shutdown. And federal government opens talks with Dangote as FCCPC insists on Naira payments. And the Daily Times, exclusive. Privatization failed because the private sector didn't invest. Professor Sambo says lack of political will, not policies behind Nigeria's power crisis. And the Platform Times says NLC threatens nationwide action over minimum wage review, demands national minimum pension. Union says soaring prices have reduced pensions to poverty wages, warns government to honor obligations to workers, retirees. And then the Abuja Inquirer is next. 221 kilometers later, how new roads are redrawing Abuja map. And then the Guardian newspaper says, battle for excess liquidity. DMO, Dangote mobilized 11 trillion naira in 6 months as real sector struggles. The Observer Times says, Onye Consola Badejo Okunsoya elected 33rd NBA president with over 12,000 votes. The NBA election was rigged. JS Okutepa, that's a senior advocate of Nigeria, expresses deep dissatisfaction. Lateef Akogbe finishes second. And the Leadership newspaper, women lawyers hail Badejo Okunsoya's emergence as NBA's second female president. And last but not least is the Sporting Live. Let's talk about what is mainly trending. Spain rule the world. Okay, it says La Roja dethroned Argentina, beat Albiceleste 1-0 in World Cup final. Torres nets decisive winner. Okay, right, and let's get down to the brass tack by doing this with my colleagues Olamide and our in-house analyst Bjorn Shomi. Guys, I hope we're really in good mind.
I hope so.
Like the last thing we say, Sana Indi Corpori Sana, that is a healthy mind in a healthy body. Because of what we had to go through this morning.
Absolutely.
Right then, let's get down to brass tacks. So if you look at the Nation newspaper saying, Nigeria asks ECOWAS to drag South Africa before AU. They said we must send signal that xenophobia is unacceptable. So we see the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, representing Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Sierra Leone, where the 2026 ECOWAS summit in Freetown is going on, proposing that Nigeria is throwing its weight behind the initial proposal by Ghana. The goal is to secure a firm, strongly worded resolution from ECOWAS for immediate presentation at the next African Union. And then Nigeria has evacuated so far over 1,490. But I know that ECOWAS is to the south, so it's to the west, and SADC, right? I think it's to the south.
Absolutely. This is one of Nigeria's strongest diplomatic responses to xenophobia in recent years. And I like that the fact that we're not going to the African Union directly. And rather than framing it as a simple bilateral agreement by urging ECOWAS to take it to the AU, we're framing it as a serious intercontinental problem of discrimination and harassment and essentially persecution. I like the fact that in the Vice President's speech, he mentioned there are other countries that have been to this, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and he did well to also remind the people that were there that during the anti-apartheid era, there are many African countries that stood behind South Africa. We imposed sanctions, we imposed scholarships, we helped them out in their hardest times. A lot of people are asking, why is Nigeria not going to the African Union directly? And that is for one reason. We want to build regional consensus. Rather than framing it as a Nigeria versus South Africa issue, we are framing it as a West Africa against Afrophobia and discrimination issue. And it's important that we speak in one voice as Africans. I really like the diplomatic response to this, and I'm hoping that it yields results. Hopefully ECOWAS listens, we take this to the AU, and there are sanctions that are put in place. Absolutely.
Well, the Nigerian delegation pointedly also reminded South Africa of West Africa's heavy financial and political sacrifices during the anti-apartheid liberation struggle, calling the current violence a direct contradiction of African solidarity. Say we've got over 150,000 African foreign nationals who have fled South Africa or been repatriated by their home government in recent weeks due to the severity of attacks. There was a video, I think you shared it with me, of a South African, a reporter who was robbed right in front of camera. These were South Africans.
You know, it's when you look at it's sad that South Africa is descending into a form of anarchy, and I will use that. I'm not using it lightly, because what will happen is eventually, when you don't have any foreigners anymore, they will end up turning against themselves, and they are beginning to do that. And what would that mean? That will create anarchy in South Africa. I don't think Cyril Ramaphosa is handling this very well at all, and I think it's been done on purpose, and I will tell you why. The fact of the matter is ANC lost ground in the last election. They became so unpopular to the extent that they now formed, you know, a coalition with a white-dominated party to govern the country. So now the local elections are coming up in November. They have no explanation for not resolving the land questions, where 70% of the arable land are owned by the white. So rather than face the problem, given Trump's threats, they chose to encourage, or they refused to discourage people from, you know, assailing other black people, which is quite very sad. And this has been done because of the local elections coming up in November. I think the vice president is right, or the president, that this issue should come up during the AU heads of states meeting.
Absolutely. I believe, sorry, quickly, I'm closing remarks on this South Africa issue because I'm very passionate. We're really urging ECOWAS to see this as a threat to all Africans, to see this as a threat to the African future. South Africans will also do well to remember that the freedom and enjoyment that they are benefiting from today was given to them and aided to them by fellow Africans in the past.
Most definitely. And they're not even saying anything about the Orania that's taking a huge chunk, you know, of their land.
Where black people are not even allowed to be within South Africa.
Within South Africa. It's so shameful. Right, then let's move on to the first news. First daily, rather, saying troops foil ISWAP school abduction plot, averts fresh students kidnap. This Nigeria also saying the same thing. Troops rescue 46 students, foil ISWAP kidnap bid in Borno. Federal government arraigns 3 over Oriri abduction. So it's beautiful that we're seeing our troops. I think I saw an infographics of, you know, published by the Nigerian soldiers, you know, Nigerian military, as to how much the gains they are recording, the number of prosecutions they are making, and the number of rescue they are also, you know, recording as well.
Absolutely. If school kidnappings have become, unfortunately, and I know this administration is working hard to fix it, but they've become one of Nigeria's biggest security failures. Counterterrorism experts for years have warned us that instead of celebrating the release of victims, let us make sure that we are more preventative in our approach. Prevention before abduction. So this is very, very welcome. The fact that this attempt was foiled is a welcome development, because it could be a very different story on this table today. We could be praying for the release of school children.
Absolutely.
Good job to our troops.
To our troops. Right, Mr. Shomi, let's move on to the Nigerian Tribune. Tinubu will beat Atiku. Southern Coalition, APC boast, says president's vote can't be splintered in South. Atiku Amechi ticket will unseat Tinubu, Shetima ADC. So these are the parties in opposition throwing banters, you know, over 2027 elections. So you see Bayo Onuga, who, you know, in a speech, I mean, maybe in his post, saying that Tinubu is really going to defeat them. And I think it was MC Oluomo that said that it was due to the Muslimism ticket that made Lagos State lose election in the last election. So this time round, that is not going to play out. So they are not going to record as much votes as they did in 2023. Do you agree?
Well, to start with, I don't believe it's just the Muslim issue.
There were
Combination
issues,
of other issues.
right.
There's the NSAS and some other issues.
That's right.
That
and
led
internal
to
wrangling,
that.
you know,
And
within the APC.
yes, internal wrangling. There's also, you know, the inability to mobilize people due to the then federal government clamp down on change of naira. There was no
That's
fuel
right.
and all that. So a lot of other issues.
Right.
added to that.
Convoluted.
Now, in relation specifically to the point you raised about whether Tinubu would defeat Atiku and Obi in the next election, the question is this: is Atiku campaigning? The election is 16th January next year. Less than 6 months to that election, ADC led by Atiku has not produced a manifesto to say, look, this is what we intend to do, and then mobilize people towards it, try and convince Nigerians. It's the same situation with NDC. So for me, I think this is a done deal. I mean, it's what are we talking about? No manifesto. They are not even campaigning. Atiku is busy with court proceedings over his political hijack of ADC. No one is even sure what will happen.
I think Mark has been sacked again.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have Obi also, who is deeply engrossed into a persecutorial feeling, which are totally unfounded. He already feels, he might not even contest the election. He might end up being, So how do you consider this as this characters as serious opposition?
Right. Okay, I'll start with you, Mr. Shomi. Looking at the Punch newspaper, it's talking about the dollar sale row. Marketers halt Dangote field loading. Federal government is stepping in. Dangote is in serious disputes over its recent switch to dollar-dominated pricing for fuel transactions. And then we see independent marketers, petroleum marketers, scaling back or halted fresh fuel purchases due to the elimination of Naira invoices. I do not know. We thought we were getting a reprieve, from this, holabaloo. While Trump and his cahoots are doing their own madness, on the global scale, we do not want Dangote to, who we see as, a messiah when it comes to the petroleum industry, but now threatening the peace of our cars.
Well, we have to look at the issues objectively. The PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act, provide for competition in the petroleum sector, not monopoly. So therefore, what the NMDPRA is trying to do is to ensure, or the federal government through the NMDPRA is to ensure that there's competition within that sector, not to essentially leave it for Dangote.
That's right.
In the second instance, Dangote is located, in a free trade zone. He also has a right, according to the rules, he can sell in any currency. That's one of the advantages of being in the free trade zone, apart from so many taxes, which is exempted from. But the truth of the matter is,
that's right,
Dangote is getting about 35 to 40% of fuel, of crude oil, which is the feedstock, for the refinery from Nigeria in Naira. But the argument of Dangote is that, look, the preponderant majority, like 60%, is being purchased using dollar from other places. Some have raised the argument that, look, you cannot sell dollar because Naira is the convertible currency in Nigeria. But the fact of the matter is, it's located in free trade zone, so he's able to do that. The issue for Dangote, which I can say clearly, is he has gone to court on it, or some other marketers have gone to court, is the issue of licensing importers to bring in fuel. And that is what Dangote is really against. It's not against other refineries within the country, smaller players, but that why are we importing when he's able to supply everything we need? That's the one issue. But it's the PIA, that provides for competition.
That's right.
And the government has no choice. The second issue, from Dangote's viewpoint, is to say, hang on a minute, you are producing crude oil. We have increased production of crude oil. So why is it that we are not supplying him with that crude oil, the excess production? But the simple answer is this. Federal government cannot give all the crude oil to Dangote.
That's right.
We need to import machines, raw materials for our industries, and we need, dollar for so many other currencies. So therefore, since crude oil sales and royalty are the main source of our foreign exchange earning, a sector alone cannot get everything, that generates the foreign currency. So therefore, we need a situation where Dangote will get some, while the rest will be sold, to provide the foreign exchange, that we need
Most
to meet
definitely.
other needs.
Well, it's a huge one. Very quickly, allow me, the NLC, looking at the platform times, NLC threatens nationwide action over minimum wage review, demands national minimum wage. Union says soaring prices have reduced pensions to poverty wages. Is it the increment of minimum wage that we should ask for, or collaborate to see how we can bring down the prices?
I like the fact that the NLC is also, they're asking for two things, not just a review of the current minimum wage, but also a review of the national minimum pension. And the argument here is very simple. People who are retired workers deserve just as much protection as active workers, because once they served in the system. But I have a worry here, because the current minimum wage was put into effect recently, but now they're asking for another review. Is the problem really the minimum wage, or is the problem inflation? And are we stuck? Yes, are we stuck in a cycle where, minimum wage is reviewed, prices rise, wages have to rise with it, and when it's cyclical problem. So let's look at that. But NLC, I don't know if I trust you guys.
Definitely. Mr. Shomi, because of our time, we will not have time to talk about the women lawyer leadership newspaper, talking about the women lawyer hailing Badejo.
No, we'll talk about it on trending now.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it on trending now, as the NBA's second female president, and that's a good story. But Spain, looking at the sporting life very quickly, in less than a minute, Spain rule the world. Argentina seemed to be
Viva
like...
la España!
What's your reading of the outcome?
I was very, very delighted. I did watch the match from the beginning to the end yesterday. Argentina failed themselves. Very lackluster performance. Spain was right on top of the game.
Spain did not show Argentina, they didn't show Messi's Argentina Messi.
Honestly, they did not show Messi. They dominated the game throughout, if you look at it. And I think when Fernandez got sent off at the dying minute, that already demoralized Argentina further. And Spain
Mr. Shomi, why have you never invited me to watch a match?
Oh, yes. Oh,
don't you have
okay.
TV
You
in your
don't
house?
watch football.
No, but still now, he's a football guy. It's not fair. Next time.
So Spain has been able to do it this time around. Messi busted out. He was crying like a baby. I mean, so I feel sorry for him.
Well,
but I'm glad Argentina lost and Spain won.
Interesting. I was also glad that England, US and all of those countries that are doing Ojuro at the beginning, they were all kicked out in the process.
But the issue of integrity would dodge FIFA throughout.
Absolutely.
There are questionable issues.
Absolutely.